Hello, I'm Frederik and I'm an expert for Adobe Analytics and also the author of the fullstackanalyst.io blog. And in today's video I want to try something that is a little bit out of the ordinary and a little bit special for me too, because it's my first YouTube video and I want to try to implement Adobe Analytics into a real-life website in just under 10 minutes. So, what do I mean by implementing Adobe Analytics? I want to configure the full Adobe Analytics backend so we're able to collect data. I want to configure Adobe Launch so we can actually implement something onto our website and then have an event fire on every page load and also on every link click on that website with just a single line of code. And to keep track of the actual time that I need to pull all of this off, I'm going to stop the clock on this phone here that I'm going to position here, and whenever I do something that actually has relevance to the video, I'm going to start the time, and whenever I go on and explain anything about what I'm doing, I'm going to stop the time so it doesn't affect the total time in the end. So you might ask yourself then, why on earth should I make this video? It's because when I hear people in the industry talk about different analytics solutions, and when they talk about Adobe Analytics, they usually do that with the concept that Adobe Analytics, as the enterprise tool that it is and as the most mature solution on the market that it really is, that it will take a lot of time to implement. And I've never personally felt that way, I've never personally experienced that, so I wanted to make this video to challenge both myself and also the industry to see if it can be done in that very smooth and agile way. So let's start from the beginning. I'm already logged into the Adobe Experience account here, and I'm going to start the timer now and head over to Adobe Analytics, which is going to drop me on my landing page by default. And as the first thing, I'm going to the admin section and to my report suite, because we need to create a new report suite to actually collect data, and up here I can select create new and select a new report suite to configure. So I'm going to stop the time right here, because now I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're seeing on the screen. So as you can see here, we can make a few selections for what we actually want to create. If we wanted to go by a template or a already existing report suite, we could just select that here and not have to start from nothing for a little project here. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to fill in the site title, which is just the display name of our report suite, and then also the report suite ID, which is something we're going to need in Adobe Launch when we actually want to track data into that report suite, next to the time zone and the go live date, which is going to be today, and then also the estimated page views per day. So then let's actually create our report suite, and I'm going to put a site title in first, which is going to be the microsite implementation, how I'm going to call this report suite. We're going to select a report suite ID, like for example microsite implementations. Then I'm going to select the appropriate time zone, which for me is going to be Berlin, and we can select a go live date, so we can just say we're going live with this tomorrow, and we're estimating a page views per day of 10 or something for this very little demo. And then we can select create report suite here, and it's going to take a few seconds, but then we will actually have our report suite created and we could already start collecting data. I'm going to stop the time right now so we can wait for this to finish. Alright, here we are, and we can now see the success message here on the screen, which is going to say that this report suite has been created successfully, and I'm going to copy this report suite ID to my notepad on the other screen so we can paste it later on. So first things first, now we should go to our admin section again, and we need to make some changes to the configuration of our report suite. And I'm going to start the timer again, go to all admin and to the report suites. And then I'm going to select my report suite from the list, and I'm going to go to the internal URL filters tab. So here we now actually need to configure on which domain our site is running, because otherwise Adobe Analytics is not going to be able to differentiate between internal and external referrers, and we want to do that. So we are going to add our website in here, and this is already spoiling the website that we're going to implement all of this in, but more on that later on. So that was now done. I can stop the time again. We're now at 1 minute and 50 seconds. So this was not that long. So what we're now going to do is we're going to head over to Adobe Launch, and actually we're going to create some events in there and create our properties so we can start collecting data. Alright, here we are in Adobe Launch, our tag manager from the Adobe world, and here we can now go to create a new property. And there's not a lot we need to fill out here. There's only the name, the type of the platform, which is going to be a website in our case, and the domain or even multiple domains. So I'm going to start the timer again and say this is going to be the microsite implementation. And I'm going to copy paste the domain into here and click save. And this is all it takes. And now we've actually created this new text property, and we can search for it. We can say we want to look for the microsites implementation, and here we are now. So I just stopped the time to give you a little bit of an explanation of what we're seeing here right now. Because in Adobe Launch, we can now configure all the rules and all the data elements, how it's called, so all the variables that we want to use for our implementation. And starting the time again, first thing we would want to do is we want to actually add Adobe Analytics to this page. So we need to search for Adobe in the catalog of extensions, which is going to extend our functionality here. And in here you can already see the report suites that we're going to use. And I'm just going to use the same one on each and every environment, and then just click save, because this is all we need to do for the basic configuration. Back to the list of available extensions, we now need to search for, I'm not going to look in the list, we now need to search for the Experience Cloud ID service, and we're just going to add that as well, so we can have an ID that actually Adobe Analytics can use. So now with all those extensions in place, we have the Experience Cloud ID service, which is going to help us to identify our users if they come back to our page. We have Adobe Analytics to actually track all the events on our site. And now we need to tell those what they should track and when they should track something. So the first thing I personally like to do is to create some data elements, which are going to contain all the information that we want to collect from the website. So the list is now empty, so we can just go ahead and click on create a new data element. And what we need to think of when we track pages or events in Adobe Analytics is how we want to identify the page that we're currently on. So I'm going to start the time again, and we want to have something like a page name in here. And this is going to be taken from the core extension, how it's called, and it's going to be something that is very, very handy, because Adobe provides a lot of information about the page that we're currently on. And we're going to identify our page by the page title. So what it says exactly in the title of your browser, that is what we're going to take as the page name for Adobe Analytics. So we're going ahead and save that. That's perfect. And now we want to add some more, because I've said we want to track each and every link that has been clicked on that website. So now we need to identify how we are going to call those links. So what we can just do is we can say, I want to have, for example, the display text of any given link. And the way we're going to do that is through a little hack that I found, because we're going to use a constant data element. And in that data element, we can actually provide some information from the clicked link, and we can just copy paste something from my blog. I'm trying to link that also in the video. Like if you see something on the screen right now, you can click that link, which is going to tell you how you can do that yourself. All right, let's put that in here. So what we're going to use in this context is the inner text of any HTML element that has been clicked on it. We're going to go ahead and save that for now. And now we actually have some very useful pieces of information already, but I want to have one more, because I also want to have the page domain, and we're going to use that as well. Also from the page info object, and here we're going to use the host name, and we're going to save that as well. And I'm going to stop the time right now for some more explanation on what to do next. now that we've decided that we want to use the page title as the page name in Adobe Analytics, and we want to capture the domain on which an event has been happening, and we want to know for any clicked links what the display text of that link was, we can now actually go ahead and create some rules. And rules in Adobe Launch are basically a way to say the system when we want events to be fired. So for our very little use case, we want to have a rule firing on every page load, and we also want to have a rule firing whenever a link has been clicked. So we're going to go over to rules now and create a new rule. So in the screen right now, we can define a lot of things. So first thing we need to put into here is the actual name of the rule. So this is going to be something like page load, for example. You can see all the auto completions of all the previous stuff I've put in there. Then we need to define when the event should be firing, and then also what should be done on that event. And I'm going to start the time now again. And for the events, we want to say whenever the page loads, we want to fire our page load event, obviously. So whenever the page bottom has been reached, so the whole site has finished loading, we want to execute this rule. And what we want to do is we want to say from the Adobe Analytics extension that we just installed on our property, we first want to set some variables, because we now want to say that for this page, we want to set the page name to the page name, and we want to say that the server, so the domain of the page, actually equals the domain that we defined before. And after we've set those variables, we then want to actually fire a page view event. So in here, we're going to say we want to fire a beacon, and we're going to send a page view event for Adobe Analytics to track. And that's all we need to track some page loads in Adobe Analytics through Adobe Launch. Next thing we need to do is we need to have another rule for link clicks. And in this case, we want to capture something else, because we want to capture all the different clicks from the mouse that we can have, but only on some specific events. So we're only going to track this for A tags, which are anchor tags, which are links in HTML language. And then we're going to use the same action that we've used before. So from the Adobe Analytics action, we want to first define the data that we want to set, and we can say we want to still set the page name to the page name. We want to set the server to the domain. We want to do it like that. And now what we need to do is we need to add another action from the Adobe Analytics extension again. And here we want to send a beacon again, but this time a s.tl beacon. So this is going to allow us to track this link and give it a custom name. So if you remember from before, we've actually defined a data element that is going to give us the display name of those links. So what we can say here is we can say clicked, and then we want to have the display name of that link, and we can just select display text like so, and it's going to pull in that display title of the link dynamically once the user clicks on that. And we can keep the change and save those. So let's stop the clock and see where we're at. We're currently at 6 minutes 26. That's already very far, and not a lot of time has passed until now, which I'm very happy about. Alright, so now that we have the rules and the data elements in place next to the extensions, we actually need to push that live onto our environment. So I'm going to start the time again. And what we just need to do is we need to create a new library, how it's called, which is just a packet of all the different changes that we've done to the page. And we want to publish this on our development environment. And I want to add all the different things that I've done so far. And then save and build that, which is going to take a little second. It's not actually taking that long, just for the front end to sync with the back end again. Let's wait a few seconds. And once that has been successfully built, we want to move this from the development environment to the staging environment, which is going to take a little second again for it to be fully built. And then once that's done, we're going to approve this and publish it to production. So there's nothing yet on production because we haven't put any code on any page yet. but it's going to be available once that's actually done. And as soon as that's done, I'm going to stop the time, because now we're actually finished, and the time is now at 7 minutes and 34 seconds, which is quite fast for a full-sized Adobe Analytics implementation. So what we now need to do is we need to actually put this on a page, and I promised you that all we need to do for that is to deploy one single line of code. So if I go to the Environments tab in Adobe Launch here, we can see all the different environments that we have. We could even create more if we needed to, but for this production environment, we can now click on this little install icon and see this one line of code that we now need to add to a page. But I mean, there's been spoilers before, but you're going to ask yourself now, what page are you actually talking about? Like, what page on the internet are we going to implement this? So the page that we're going to implement this is a page that is very near and dear to me, because it's the page of the Analytics Power Hour podcast. So you could say this is basically the quintessential web page that you can find on the internet, because you have different pages on here. You have a nice little subscribe button that we may want to track, like different links and different pages. So this is like a very good example of an actual web page that we could implement Adobe Launch and Adobe Analytics into. So let's take our one line of code and actually put that onto that web page. So as you can see right now, I have left the full screen mode so we can actually see what is happening on the page, because what I've installed in my browser, you can see it up in the corner here, is the Adobe Experience Platform Debugger. And that's a really helpful tool, because what that allows us to do is we can go to this tab and the configuration page, and we can just take any Adobe Launch script that we want from any property that we can think of, and we can just inject that into this page. And we can now click apply, and it's going to reload the page. And now we're actually going to find our Adobe Launch property on here, like it's been there natively from that site before. And you can see all the different extensions are there. It's on the right production environment. And now it's actually loaded all the different things that we defined in Adobe Launch before. Alright, so let's take a look if our Adobe Analytics event is actually firing as expected. Because if you remember, we want to track the name of the page exactly the same way as we track the title of this tab here. And you can actually see that if we scroll down here for this one Adobe Analytics event that has fired, that the page name is actually exactly what we wanted to have here for the page title. And you can also see that the server is equal to the domain that the page is running on, so it's actually working exactly as we want to. Now let's check if we also have our link tracking in place, because now as I click on this link, we would expect to also see an event in our debugger. And you can see as we click that event, it actually fired straight away. So we can now see that in here the link name is equal to clicked about. And if you remember, what we want to track for each link click is always the display name of that link that we clicked, and also with the prefix clicked. So we can now see that users are clicking on about or all episodes and all those things. And also if we click on the subscribe button, and if I actually hit it, we can now see that those clicks are captured in Adobe Analytics exactly the way we want to, because here we can see now that the event says click subscribe, exactly the way we want it to be. So back in Adobe Analytics now, we can do something that is super helpful to help us to validate our implementation, because in the settings of our newly created report suite, we can now go to the real-time report settings. And by default, we don't have any real-time reports enabled, so we need to do that right now. And in here, we can just enable this and say we want to track all the different pages in real time, which is exactly what we want to do. But what I want to track in here as well is the server that we are setting in our front end, and also the link name, so custom link as it's called here. And we can just go ahead, save this, and now we're going to be able to monitor all those click events in real time as they come in. Alright, so let's click a little bit around on the page that we're on right now. So we know now that we have Adobe Launch and Adobe Analytics on this page. So as I click around on this page, we should now actually collect some data. So for example, if I click on my good friend Tim Wilson on here, let's not open his Twitter page, we should now see that reflected in Adobe Analytics in a second. And you can already see there's the first page view events coming in here, and you can see that they actually come in real time because we can now see the different pages that we've been on, like the home page and the about page, and we can see the clicks that I've just done in real time on that page. Like I clicked the about page and I also clicked on Tim Wilson, so it's actually tracking exactly in the way that we want to in real time, like still under 10 minutes time, so that's pretty impressive, I would say. Alright, so it's now a little bit later. You can see it's still the same day because I still have the completion time on my phone here. But I wanted to show you how the data that we collected from our website now actually shows up in Adobe Analytics, because we can see in Analyst Workspace now, as I drag in the server dimension here, that we can actually see all the hits that have been received from the analytics.io page, which I can still recommend for various reasons, but our little implementation actually works. And we can now, for example, break this down to see which links on that page I clicked, so we can see that I in fact clicked on Tim Wilson, or we could search for the page dimension to see which page we've been on and all those different things. And the great thing about Adobe Analytics and Analyst Workspace is that based on this implementation that we've put on the page, we could now just put that implementation on other pages as well, like marketing landing pages, like microsites, like whatever you may have on those very like small scale implementations that like larger companies tend to have a lot of. And you can just put that one line of code onto them and then have all of them in one report suite within Adobe Analytics. Now what you can then do in Adobe Analytics is you can just right click on any of those in Analyst Workspace, then create a segment from that, so create segment from selection, and Adobe Analytics actually lets you create virtual report suites. So what that means is you can put all the data from a certain domain or a certain website into one bucket, and then for example give your marketing team or your agency only access to that one virtual report suite. So you can have many virtual report suites pointing to the same physical report suite, and that way you can have all your different microsites in one place and then give people access based on which domains they want to use, which is super lean and agile. And that way you can have many implementations and websites tracked with just that one line of code, that one report suite, that one Adobe launch property that we've created. And that's a great starting point to actually kick off your implementation process. Alright, so I think I've been able to show that it's actually possible to implement Adobe Analytics into a real life website in under 10 minutes, which just a single line of code. But why would I want to prove this point? There's two reasons for that. First reason is because I wanted to have this video for myself, so when I talk to stakeholders internally and externally, I can just point them to this video and say, well, if you're not believing me, if you don't believe me that it can be very fast and agile to implement Adobe Analytics, here's the actual proof. Here's actually where it goes through all the different steps that are required, and you can see for yourself that it's very fast and agile to implement. And then secondly, also when I talk to people outside my own company, I want to show that it's not the tool. I want to show that if it takes a lot of time to implement Adobe Analytics, it's usually because it's in a corporate context where just everything takes a lot of time to do, because it's very complex to get all the teams aligned, to gather requirements, to create the implementation documentation, and you probably also want to add a data layer to your website and collect different pieces of information, collect like product information or content information, and all that will take more time than if you just collect all the page titles and all the link names as I've done. But it's possible to do that, and it's a fully featured Adobe Analytics implementation, and you can then just take that as a starting point to go along, implement that on many different websites, create virtual report suites for all those different websites, and then have that one microsite implementation where you can just put all your landing pages, all your marketing websites, all those like very little experiences that are just 1 or 2 pages. You can all throw those in one report suite, create virtual report suites on top of that, and then give people access to that and have them work with this great tool in a very small and agile way. So, alright, I've been talking about this for way too long. I hope you found this video interesting. Like, let me know on Twitter, on Measure Slack, and also on YouTube if I decide to enable comments. And let me know what you thought of this video, if you would like to see me do more videos, and also if there's any topics you would like me to talk about. And until then, enjoy the rest of your day and have a lovely time until we see each other again.